Welcome to another episode of It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University Alumni and Friends community. My name is Mike Mitchell, Associate Director of Alumni Relations here at Salem State. Very excited to be doing our first on-location interview at the beautiful Kernwood Country Club here in Salem with Salem State icon, educator, coach, Hall of Famer, the one and only Mr. George Jacobson. Coach, how are you?
Thank you, Mike. I really appreciate this opportunity to share some stories with you and with the community as well.
As the creator of our golf program, your history is vast and deep and storied, and we are going to dive into it. But the first question I always like to ask guests on the show is, what brought you to Salem State and how did you end up here?
Well, it's interesting. I taught for, after getting out of the military in 1959, I had an opportunity to travel to the North Shore and taught up in Rockport as both the biology teacher and basketball coach. And golf was not part of the program until I began to decide maybe we ought to institute a golf program. So we started that at Rockport. And for 7 years, I enjoyed my experience, gaining more and more knowledge of the game and knowledge of how to deal with players and how to encourage them to get into something that might be a lifelong experience. And so it was a wonderful experience. And then all of a sudden, and then going to graduate schools at the same time, getting further degrees, I wondered if possibly maybe I should look into doing something a little bit more than the high school. Not that the high school teaching is anything more than what it really is. It's fantastic. But there was an opportunity to apply for a job at Salem State. And what they were looking for is a golf coach. And being fairly new at starting the golf program at Rockport, I decided, let's give it a chance. And so I applied and had an opportunity to meet with Dr. James Sullivan, who was at that time the originator of the golf program at Salem State. Mm-hmm. And because of his new role as the assistant to the president or academic dean, he had not have the time to devote to the program. So he was looking for somebody who might be willing to encourage more players and to get more involved with the golf program at Salem. And it was just a perfect match for me to come to meet with Jim and to have an opportunity to try the collegiate sport as well as being involved with the high school programs. So that's where it all started.
And I think there's some irony there to be told as well, because you had shared with me previously that you weren't a golfer growing up.
Oh, no.
And it was Mrs. Jacobson who kind of got you into the game. So I got kind of a kick out of that when you told me that. But what was it about the game that finally, when you got into it, you said, this is really something I can get behind?
Well, it was interesting. My experience at BU, I played soccer for 3 years and ended up being the captain of the soccer program and really got into soccer. And when I met my wife for the first time in a junior year, we began to share some interest in activities. She was very interested in golf, and in fact, she said to me, I've come to many of your soccer games. Don't you think it'd be something that we could do together down the road? And she said, how would you like to play some golf? I said, golf? Why would I want to play golf? I mean, you spend all that time chasing a ball on the golf course, and it just didn't make sense to me. But because I respected her and her interest, I decided I would try the golf program. And actually, she gave me my first set of clubs and also an opportunity to have a full-time professional lesson. And at that particular point, I began to realize that this game is so competitive for me individually and also my interest in sports to begin with. I decided, let's go with that. And I began to study and become involved with the golf program based upon her interest in getting me into golf. And my interest in coaching and taking golf and starting something brand new was a real challenge.
So thank you, Mrs. Jacobson, for
Thank
putting
you.
those clubs in his hands 60 years later.
I thank her every day. I really do.
Coach, as we mentioned at the top of our conversation, we're here at the magnificent Kernwood Country Club in Salem. I know this course specifically and your history with the program at Salem is very important to you. What is Kernwood? Why is it significant to you? What kind of special place does it hold in your heart?
Well, there's so many reasons. Kernwood was so gracious in allowing us to have our practices here and also to generate the sport and encourage teams that wanted to play us. We encouraged some of the Division I schools to compete with us because they really would like to play Kernwood. And one of my first players that played for me was a member here. His name was Jeff Prost, and his dad was a member. And so it was like a bonding of the players, the golf course, and what it had to offer, and the enticement of other teams to want to enjoy the course. I was really at that point trying to insist on the players that came here from outside how important it is to have your best behavior, because if you really mess up here, I wouldn't want to use this opportunity to develop the program. And I would say that Kernwood had a great deal to do with the development of our program, and they continue to offer us the opportunity to practice and to play. And in fact, the nice part of this course is the current golf team has one of the co-captains. His name is Danny Delicio, and Danny this year just won the club championship here. So the connection between Salem State, Kernwood, and the love for what it has to offer is just fabulous.
Little home field advantage probably for Danny a little bit.
No question.
And I know you had mentioned at one point too, Coach, that not only in terms of enticing other schools and programs to come here, but when you're going out to try to recruit a potential player, bringing them to a place like this makes the sell a little bit easier, I imagine.
No question. In fact, I'll later talk about one of the former players that I've had, and he is a golf professional right now in the Cape, Tom Kobe. He was at the point of his senior year in high school contemplating going to a Division II school in Connecticut as compared to Salem State. And so I said to him, Tommy, do you realize that our home course is Kernwood? He said, really? So I'm sure that one of the major influences of him coming to play for me at Salem State was because of our home course. And I began to realize as I started to talk to players in their senior year, deciding where they want to go to school, I know that Kernwood, being our home course, had a significant impact in developing the program.
And Tom, you mentioned a teaching pro now, but also he went on to a Hall of Fame career at Salem State as well.
Yes, he
was.
was.
2018, and I think large in part to the nomination that you might have wrote for him.
That's true. That's very true.
Coach, thinking about your time starting in the game back in the early 60s to now, what are some of the things about the game now versus then that surprised you the most?
Well, unfortunately, today, I think NCAA has encouraged the Division I schools to just play Division I, Division II with Division II. And what was great when I first started is that we were able to compete in a tournament that had Divisions I, II, and III. And the challenge for us at this level to compete with a Division I school was just fantastic. And I think it gave an added incentive for our players. Going back to the question, I'm not sure I answered it correctly.
No, I think that was great. Yeah.
But I do think that I think it's getting to be very difficult to get players to come to a Division III school because there's no scholarship. We encourage them to play because of our program and because of the academic program we have here at Salem State. Our business program primarily has been one that encouraged so many of my players to want to come here because they had an excellent academic background, and the tuition was reasonable for them to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So it has changed. Now Division I teams will not play against Division III.
And I have to imagine back in those days when, for a lack of better terms, your little D3 program was playing against some of those D1 programs. And I bet you there were some times throughout those years where some of our guys could hold their own against those big D1 programs.
No question.
Yeah.
No question.
So as you think back on your college career and you go, you know what? I got to take on some of the best in the country, and we did all right.
Well, thank you. And ECAC tournaments also allowed us to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We played a lot of Ivy League schools, had an opportunity to play at Yale, up in Hanover, at Dartmouth. We went to West Point. We went to a lot of the Division I programs, and it was a great opportunity for our Division III players to compete.
In your time, you mentioned Tom Tobey just now, but there's been a number of your players that have gone on to teaching careers, being pros themselves, coaching. What does it mean to you when you have a player like that and you see them kind of pick up the torch and carry it on into the future? How does that make you feel?
Oh, it touches me so much to see that the players that have bonded with our team, and also we've had an opportunity, we consider this a family. It's not a golf team, it's a golf family. I can remember when we try out at the beginning of the year, they would all come over to the house and we'd have a little cookout for them so that they get to know each other without competing, but just to get to know each other personally. And to see some of these players, mention some of them, you mentioned Tom Tobey, Kim O'Neill, who right now is a golf professional still, and I'm trying to see when he's going to retire. He's in his 70s now, but he still loves the sport, and he gives back to what he initially thought was important for him earlier on.
And you mentioned Kim. I think it's worth noting too, and this was kind of one of the first experiences for me that helped kind of strengthen my understanding of the history of the program, is that a couple of years ago, 2022, the class of 72 turned 50 years old, and that class of 72 team that you had was something pretty special, and we were able to induct them into the Athletic Hall of Fame as a team with you at the helm. Kim, a member of that team, Steve Campbell, a member of that team, Ken Beckier, a lot of other guys. What was it about that 72 team that was so special?
Wow. It's a hard thing for me to single out, but you mentioned some names. Each one of those players, I believe, had a personal commitment to do their very best and to maintain a good academic background so that they would be able to graduate and go on. Speaking of Steve Campbell was not only a captain for 2 years, but I originally had him in 1966 when I first came on. And what happened, because he was in the Naval Reserve, they called him up to active duty, so he didn't come back to me until 71.
Okay.
So here's a person who started with the program, came back after his military experience, and continued on, became captain. And I would say that Steve Campbell was one of my primary recruiters for players. And I found that if you offer a good program and the players are satisfied, your best recruiters are the people who played for you. And Steve, no question, was one of the best recruiters I've ever had. Our Melrose connection came from Steve. And I must say that 16 years of his coaching Salem State and his continuance of the program is another form of dedication. So that's my feeling of what I think the program has done for him.
And that team specifically was able to travel pretty significantly throughout the country and in some pretty heavy tournaments. I mean, I think you had mentioned at one point was it Torrey Pines they had played, or
Yes, we played, well, actually, because of a connection with John Means, who was the golf coach at that time at West Point. um, he suggested that, what are you doing in spring break? And I said, well, we'd like to visit someplace special. He said, well, we're going to be out in California. Of course, when you're in the military academy, I guess you can travel anywhere you want.
mm-hmm.
But he said, we'd love to have you come out and join us. And I said, that's fantastic. So we had the opportunity in I believe it was in the, let's see, I'll have to take a draw. I
We'll
don't
take a double
recall.
check. Yeah.
But we did play out in Torrey Pines. And after that, I think it was in the mid 80s.
Okay.
Guaranteed. And not only did we play Torrey Pines, we had an opportunity while we were there to visit Tijuana, Mexico.
Oh boy.
And we played there as well. And it was just a fantastic experience. Recruitment, you mentioned that before. When you start sharing what your experience with a golf program and where we played and who we've had play with us and where we've gone, it certainly does help the recruitment of players coming in.
You had mentioned previously that there were opportunities abound to take our players kind of throughout the country and to places they might not have otherwise have been if it weren't for the golf program. But in the late 80s, you had stepped away from the program as the head coach, but then you had kind of taken over a new leadership role in an organization that you had been a part of for some time called the NEIGA. What is the NEIGA and what do they do?
It's called the New England Intercollegiate Golf Association, and it's been in existence for quite some time before even Salem State's program started. And we were initially eligible to compete in that. It's divisions 1, 2, and 3. 48 different colleges from all over New England compete at, right now, they compete at a course called the Captain's Course in the Cape in Brewster. But my involvement with it was when we first started, I became so involved with the coaches in different levels that I got involved with the leadership and was involved as the captain, president of the organization. And then as I decided to retire, I said, the person who encouraged me to be involved with it was Gordon McCullough, who was the previous director of New England's. And he said, Coach, I'm having some issues, and so I'm going to step out. Would you be interested in taking over? I said, you got to be kidding me. Take over this organization? I don't think I could do it. So when he passed away, obviously there was a void, and I had retired. Talk about timing. When I had retired at the same time, I decided that I'd apply for the job and took it over and held on to that for 20 years.
Wow.
And ran the New England's. We were there from 1990 to 2000. We were at New Seabury, and we played 36 holes. And then on the 2000, New Seabury was doing some renovations to the golf course, so they said, you'll have to find another place. So we decided we go to the Captain's Course, and they accepted us, and that is still the home site of it. And I was there for 10 years as well, and retired from that organization in 2010. The beautiful part about this whole scenario of being involved with the New England Intercollegiates is that my wife, who got me into golf, was my strong right-hand person during the entire team. She was the secretary and treasurer of our organization during that 20-year period. So not only was I involved with the running of the program, but we were working together putting on the program. And what a fantastic experience that was. I have a beautiful picture at home that shows the two of us the day we retired. So what started out from an experience that she got me into, and ending in my involvement with the golf, college golf, was working with her. So what a beautiful story.
It's a labor of love.
Yes, it is.
Coach, I wanna take a moment and read your resume as I lead into the next question. So, with more than 300 match wins, a win percentage of over 900, coaching 21 All-Americans, going to 21 straight NCAA championship appearances, finishing among the top 10 12 times, you have probably experienced some things throughout those years, and I'm wondering what some of those standout memories and times for you might have been.
Boy, tough question. Do we have time?
We have all the time you need.
I think I must say that in coaching, whether it be golf or basketball, which I did when I was at Rockport, and also freshman basketball at Salem State, I think you need to have a good working relationship with your team and your players individually. And you have to find out what trigger can you pull for each individual player to have that person get the best out of their talent. And I was so fortunate to have quality players, quality individuals that were willing to put the practice time to develop their talent. And so I would say those victories that are on my record really should be attributed to the players who created that, because I owe all my gratitude to them for being part of the program and the experience. What I love about it is that there are times when I'll have a phone call from one of my previous players. Coach, what are you doing? Can we go out for have lunch? It's not just that the team is over and you're done with it, but we continue a golf family, and I just feel so proud of the fact that we've had that experience.
And as someone who joined the campus community in the 60s, and you mentioned at the top of our conversation, one of your first conversations was with Jim Sullivan. But throughout your time in the program, whether it was James Sullivan, John Galaris, Tim Shea, Nikki Wood, you've been a part of the Salem State Athletics Department for a long time, but our community in general for a very long time. And I'm sure you've seen, you know better than most, all the changes that have taken place at our campus and our little school on the North Shore. And I wonder, to close our time today, Coach, what does being a member of this community mean to you?
It means everything. I think that having an opportunity to coach and also being able to be an administrator, having worked as associate dean of students for 10 years, and then being back into the classroom for another 17 years, I found that I had a fantastic opportunity to meet with individuals and help them figure out what they want to do for their life. A lot of times during this counseling session, I would have people come in with academic difficulties. And I ask them, what seems to be the problem with your grades? And they said, well, I didn't know what to take, so someone told me to take this particular course. Instead of maybe taking a year off and finding out what you want to do with your life and what seems to be important and what are your strengths, instead of just go to school for some reason and take this program because maybe that's where you're going to get a bigger income. You really need to go into a program that fits your personality, fits your talents, and fits your gifts. So over that long period of time, both teaching, coaching, administering, I found that the teaching part was probably an opportunity to see more people on a daily basis and get to know them better than it was as an administrator, where they had to make an appointment. and just getting back to that, I was in the 70s when I was in the Student Affairs Office. And there were a lot of crises that were at that time that students needed to talk to you about their personal situation. And they would come in to make an appointment. And you should not have to make an appointment for 2 days from now to deal with an issue that they want to share with you. And they're willing to share it with you. In the classroom, you can teach your class, go back to your office, leave the door open, and you're there. And you can interact with students. I found that that part of it was so much more meaningful for me than the administrative part. Not that I have anything against, I was not fit out for that particular style. But I just enjoyed my time that I was there.
Coach, almost, what do we say, almost 60 years you've been a part of our campus community. You are a legend. You are one of the most extraordinary human beings I've ever had the pleasure of knowing. You are a Hall of Famer by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh.
As a human being, as a coach, as a friend, as a colleague. I want to thank you for spending some time with us today here at Kernwood Country Club, and certainly would like to thank the folks at Kernwood Country Club as well for giving us the opportunity to connect today with Coach Jacobson. And just we're beyond grateful that you're a part of our team and you're a part of our community here at Salem State, Coach. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. May I ask one more
Please.
thing? I neglected to mention Jerry Driscoll, who is on the very first team that we played when we qualified for the NAIAs, and that was the beginning of us going to national tournaments. We won the NAIA tournament in 1966 or 1967, and we were then eligible to travel to Davenport, Iowa. And I said, "Oh, there's no way we can afford to do that. I have to mention this." So Jerry happened to talk to the team. They said, "What can we do to see if we can get the college to send us?" Mike Shea, who is another former player of mine during that team, and also a PGA professional as well, said, "Coach, I'm going to go over to knock on Dr. Meyer's home, not the office." Because maybe it was about 8 o'clock when we got back. He knocked on the door. He said, "Dr. Meyer," he just went to, he just talked about the excitement of winning this NAIA tournament and having a chance to go to Davenport, Iowa. And so therefore, based upon that, we had an opportunity to have enough funds to go to this national event. And from there, it was the beginning. So I'm sorry I didn't put that in earlier.
I think that's the challenge of 60 years of memories, is that you're not going to be able to remember everything all the time.
So Jerry Driscoll, Mike Shea, bless his heart, he has since passed away. But so many wonderful memories.
Well, Coach, again, we want to thank you so much for the time, for your dedication to the campus and our community, at the thousands of student athletes and students that you've mentored and guided along the way. We're just very, very grateful to you.
Thank you, Mike. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share this.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody watching, and another thank you to the staff here at Kernwood Country Club for being so gracious and hosting us today. This has been another episode of It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University Alumni and Friends community. My name is Mike Mitchell, and until next time, thanks for watching.